The arrogance of empires. The Vraxian warfleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic locusts, 500 warships strong, each one a monument to millennia of conquest. Their hulls gleamed beneath the distant sun, polished and proud, adorned with the sigils of 1,000 defeated worlds. High Commander Zelthor stood on the bridge of the eternal dominance, his 4 eyes fixed on the blue marble spinning ahead. Earth. Such a fragile thing, he muttered, mandibles clicking with amusement. How did such primitives even reach the stars? His second-in-command, a younger officer named Krell, shifted uncomfortably. Commander, intelligence reports indicate unusual military activity. Their moon base has gone dark. No communications, no thermal signatures. Zelthor waved a clawed hand dismissively. Cowardice. They hide because they know what comes. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with contempt. Humans fight each other over water and dirt. They poison their own world. They are fractured, weak, barely 300 years into space travel. This will not be a war. It will be a lesson. Across the galaxy in the marble halls of the Galactic Council, the High Arbiter watched the invasion feed with growing unease. 17 species sat in attendance, representatives of civilizations that had endured for tens of thousands of years. They observed in silence as the Vraxian armada crossed the orbit of Mars. The Vraxians have made their move, the Arbiter announced, her voice echoing through the chamber. Humanity has been given no terms, no warning. This is a war of extermination. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Cathari ambassador, a being of crystalline thought, spoke first. Then Earth will fall within hours. Humanity lacks shielding technology. They have no quantum weaponry. Their largest vessel is barely 1/10 the mass of a Vraxian dreadnought. Agreed, said the Draxan representative, a creature of scales and ancient memory. We have seen this pattern before. Young species full of fire and pride, crushed beneath the heel of reality. It is unfortunate, but inevitable. But the Arbiter did not look away from the screen. Something in the data streams unsettled her. Earth's orbital defenses had gone silent. No distress calls, no evacuation signals, just silence. Perhaps, she said quietly, we should watch more carefully. On Earth, in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Colorado Rockies, Admiral Sophia Reyes stood before a wall of holographic displays. Her face was carved from stone, her gray eyes reflecting the glow of tactical overlays. Around her, 200 officers worked in controlled chaos, their voices clipped and precise. Vraxian fleet is holding formation at lunar orbit, reported Commander Daniel Cross, his hand hovering over the weapons console. They're scanning us, probably wondering why we're not screaming. Reyes allowed herself the ghost of a smile. Let them wonder. She had spent the last 72 hours preparing for this moment. Not with hope, not with prayers, but with cold, ruthless calculation. Humanity had studied the Vraxians for months, ever since their first diplomatic contact had turned into a declaration of genetic superiority. Earth scientists had analyzed every scrap of intelligence, every fragment of stolen data from black market sources, and they had learned something important. The Vraxians fought like aristocrats, clean, honorable, predictable. Humanity would not. All stations. This is Reyes, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. Execute Protocol Lazarus. Bring the moon back online. Across the lunar surface, hidden beneath craters and regolith, massive power cores roared to life. What the Vraxians had dismissed as a silent graveyard suddenly erupted with energy. Rail cannons the size of skyscrapers rose from concealed silos. Missile batteries, dormant and cold, ignited in sequence. And deep within Tycho crater, something far more terrible awakened. Commander Zelthor's smug expression faltered as his sensor officer shouted in alarm. Energy spikes. Hundreds of them. The moon is... The first volley hit before he could finish. Earth's rail cannons did not fire elegant plasma bolts or graceful energy beams. They fired tungsten telephone poles accelerated to a fraction of light speed. No shields, no mercy, just mass and velocity and physics. The rounds punched through Vraxian hulls like they were made of parchment, tearing through 3, sometimes 4 ships in a single shot. Zelthor watched in disbelief as his vanguard disintegrated. Return fire. All batteries. But Reyes had planned for that too. From Earth's surface, a new weapon launched. Not missiles, not lasers. Drones. Thousands of them. each no larger than a human fist swarming toward the Vraxian fleet like angry hornets. They were cheap, disposable, and utterly relentless. The Vraxians tried to shoot them down, but for every 10 destroyed, 100 more took their place. And when the drones reached the enemy ships, they did not explode. They ate. Nanomachine payloads activated on contact, dissolving armor plating, severing power conduits, turning proud warships into floating scrap. The Vraxians had never seen anything like it. In their culture, warfare was noble. Controlled, this was butchery. Pull back, Zelthor roared. Reform at high orbit. But humanity was not done. From the dark side of the moon, a single massive cannon emerged. It was not elegant. It was not sophisticated. It was a magnetic accelerator the size of a city, powered by 6 fusion reactors, and it fired a projectile that had been specially prepared for this moment. A nuclear warhead wrapped in a tungsten shell. The round screamed through space, and when it struck the Eternal Dominance, it did not merely penetrate the hull. It detonated inside. The flagship of the Vraxian Armada became a miniature sun, and for 3 terrible seconds the battlefield was silent. Then, from every corner of Earth's defense grid, Admiral Reyes's voice echoed across all frequencies. In every language the galaxy knew. This is Earth. We do not surrender. We do not negotiate, and we do not fight fair. If you came here expecting honor, you came to the wrong world. Turn back now, or learn what it means to wage war against a species that has survived ice ages, plagues, and itself. In the Galactic Council chambers, 17 species sat in stunned silence. The Arbiter leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. By the stars, what have they done? The doctrine of desperation, the Vraxian fleet reeled in chaos. Of the 500 warships that had entered Earth's orbit with such confidence, 73 were already gone, vaporized, shredded, or drifting as lifeless hulks. The rest scattered like startled prey, their formation broken, their pride shattered. Sub-Commander Krell now commanded what remained of the Armada. Zelthor's death had been instant, his consciousness snuffed out in nuclear fire before he could even process his failure. Krell stared at the tactical display, his hands trembling as he tried to make sense of the nightmare unfolding before him. They fight like animals, he whispered. No honor, no code. They use weapons banned by the Galactic Accords for 3,000 years. His tactical officer looked up, fear evident in his 4 eyes. Commander, the human drones are adapting. They're learning our targeting protocols. Every ship we lose, they study. Every pattern we use, they counter. Krell felt something he had never experienced in 2 decades of military service. Terror. How is this possible? They're primitives. They should be extinct by now. But they weren't. And deep in that Colorado bunker, Admiral Reyes knew exactly why. Status report, Reyes demanded, her eyes scanning the holographic battle map, where red icons were finally beginning to outnumber blue. Commander Cross worked his console with mechanical efficiency, though sweat beaded on his forehead. Lunar batteries at 60% capacity. Drone swarms are holding, but we're burning through fabrication materials faster than projected. Vraxians are pulling back to high orbit. They're regrouping. Casualties. Moon-based Tranquility took a direct hit before we could raise shields. 300 personnel. Armstrong Station is venting atmosphere. Evacuation in progress. Cross's jaw tightened. Earthside, Sydney took orbital bombardment. Estimated civilian casualties in the thousands. Reyes closed her eyes for half a heartbeat, just long enough to feel the weight. Then she opened them again and they were cold as the void. They wanted war. Now they have it. She turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to all defense stations. Authorization Reyes Alpha 7. Across Earth's remaining defensive network, a message transmitted. Not to surrender. Not to negotiate. To unleash hell. In the Galactic Council chambers, the observers had stopped pretending this was a routine monitoring session. Every species present now watched the feeds with rapt attention. Their various forms of shock and disbelief written across alien features. The Cathari ambassador's crystalline structure pulsed with agitation. This is barbarism. Those nanomachine weapons, they're classified as weapons of extinction. The humans are using technology we banned after the Grief Wars. They're using everything, the Draxan representative corrected, his ancient voice heavy with something that might have been respect or horror. Look at their deployment patterns. They're not fighting to win. They're fighting to hurt. The Arbiter watched as Earth's forces implemented what the humans called Phase 2. From the planet's surface, hundreds of missiles launched, but these were not aimed at the Vraxian fleet. They were aimed at Earth's own satellites. What are they doing? Someone gasped. The answer came seconds later. The missiles detonated, transforming Earth's orbital infrastructure into a field of debris. Thousands of fragments, each traveling at tremendous velocity, creating an expanding cloud of destruction. The Vraxians, still trying to regroup, flew directly into it. Ships designed to withstand plasma fire and energy weapons found their hulls punctured by paint chips traveling at 8 kilometers per second. A civilization that had mastered faster than light travel was being destroyed by garbage. They're weaponizing their own losses, the Arbiter breathed. Every ship we've seen destroyed, every satellite. They're turning the debris field into a minefield. A new voice spoke up. Ambassador Thelnix of the Concordance, a species that had never known war, could barely process what she was witnessing. But they're trapping themselves. That debris field will make orbital operations impossible for decades. They're crippling their own space infrastructure. They don't care, the Draxan said quietly. Don't you see? They're willing to sacrifice everything. Their economy, their future, their own advancement. None of it matters compared to survival. They would rather set their own house on fire than let an invader claim it. On the main display, the Vraxian fleet attempted to push through the debris field toward Earth. They lost another 16 ships in the attempt. But some made it through, their hulls scarred and bleeding atmosphere. But functional. They prepared to bombard the planet. That's when Earth played its final card. Commander Cross looked up from his console, his face pale. Admiral, the Vraxians are in bombardment range. They're targeting major population centers. Beijing, Lagos, São Paulo. Execute Prometheus Protocol, Reyes said calmly. Cross's hands hesitated over the controls. Ma'am, I know what it is, Commander. Execute. He did. Around the globe, in hidden facilities that had been built in secret over the past 6 months, massive portals irised open. These were not weapons. They were engines. Specifically, they were the experimental fusion drives that were meant to power humanity's first generation of deep space colony ships. They had never been tested at full power until now. Reyes had positioned them strategically, massive engines mounted on reinforced pylons, aimed not at the sky but parallel to Earth's surface. When they ignited simultaneously, they didn't propel anything into space. They turned Earth's atmosphere into a weapon. Superheated plasma erupted from the drives, creating artificial solar winds that screamed into orbit. The atmospheric disruption was catastrophic. Hurricanes spawned across 3 continents, temperature fluctuations that would take months to stabilize. But the effect on the Vraxian fleet was immediate. Ships designed for the vacuum of space suddenly found themselves fighting through an ocean of fire. Sensors went blind. Targeting systems failed. The elegant warships that had conquered 100 worlds flailed helplessly as Earth's own atmosphere rose up to swallow them. They're burning their own planet, Krell whispered, watching his fleet disintegrate. They're madmen, monsters. But he was wrong. They were human. And humans had learned long ago that when you have nothing left to lose, you have everything to fight with. Sub-Commander Krell made his decision. Full retreat. All ships. We leave this cursed system. But as the surviving Vraxian vessels turned to flee, Admiral Reyes spoke one more time across all frequencies. You came here to conquer. You came here to enslave. But you forgot something important. Her voice was cold, final. On Earth we have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. You mistook our softness for weakness. You mistook our caution for cowardice. You attacked our home, killed our people, and expected us to kneel. A new signature appeared on every sensor screen. Massive vessels emerging from the far side of the moon. Ships that had been hidden, waiting. Earth's actual fleet, not defensive stations. Not jury-rigged weapons, warships crude compared to Vraxian technology, perhaps. But there were hundreds of them, and every single one was crewed by humans who had just watched their world burn. So let me be perfectly clear, Reyes continued. You have exactly one chance to leave our system alive. Take it. Because the next time you see humanity, we won't be defending our cradle. We'll be coming for yours. The Vraxian remnant fled, and across the galaxy, 17 species watched in silence as Earth's battered, Bleeding worlds stood victorious. The Arbiter spoke what they were all thinking. The galaxy has changed. We just witnessed the birth of something terrible. The Draxan representative nodded slowly. We witnessed the moment the prey became the predator. The Price of Evolution 3. Weeks after the Battle of Earth, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. This time, humanity had been invited to attend. Admiral Sophia Reyes walked through the marble halls of the Council station with Commander Daniel Cross at her side. She wore her dress uniform, but it could not hide the cost of victory. Her face was leaner, harder. Her eyes carried shadows that would never fully fade. Earth had survived, but the scars ran deep. Sydney was a crater. Armstrong Station drifted as a tomb. The orbital debris field would take 50 years to clear. 30,000 civilians dead, another 100,000 wounded. And the atmospheric disruption from the Prometheus protocol had triggered weather patterns that would take a generation to stabilize. But Earth still stood, and the galaxy would never forget it. As Reyes entered the council chamber, 17 species fell silent. She could feel their stares, some fearful, some calculating, some simply shocked that humanity had survived at all. She took her place at the chamber floor, standing where countless species had stood before her, and waited. The High Arbiter spoke first, her voice careful, measured. Admiral Reyes, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you. We have much to discuss. I'm sure we do. Reyes replied evenly. The Cathari ambassador's crystalline form pulsed red with agitation. You violated 16 galactic accords in your defense. Nanomachine weapons, weaponized debris fields, atmospheric manipulation that borders on planetary genocide. These tactics have been banned for 3 millennia. Because they work, Reyes interrupted, her voice cutting like steel. Because they're effective. Because when someone comes to exterminate your species, you don't check the rulebook, you survive. At what cost? The Cathari demanded. You've crippled your own world. Set your advancement back decades. For what? Pride? Reyes took a step forward, and something in her movement made several ambassadors flinch. For our children, for our future, for the right to exist. Her eyes swept the chamber. The Vraxians came to our world without warning, without terms, with nothing but extermination in their hearts. They killed 30,000 of my people. They bombarded cities full of families, children, the elderly. And you ask me about cost? The chamber remained silent. Commander Cross stepped forward, his voice calmer but no less firm. With respect, Council, we've reviewed your accords. Every single restriction on weaponry, every banned technology, they were all implemented after the species using them had already established themselves as galactic powers. You wrote rules for a game humanity was never invited to play, then condemned us for breaking them when we fought for our lives. The Draxan representative, ancient and scarred, rumbled his agreement. The human speaks truth. We created our laws from positions of strength, never considering that younger species might face extinction before achieving that strength. He turned his massive head toward Reyes. But I have a question, Admiral. What happens now? Your species has tasted victory through brutality. Will Earth become the next Vraxian dominion? Will you take what was done to you and inflict it upon others? Reyes met his gaze without flinching. 3 weeks ago, I would have said no immediately. I would have promised that humanity fights only in self-defense, that we seek only peace. She paused and her voice dropped. But 3 weeks ago, I hadn't watched Sydney burn. I hadn't seen children pulled from rubble. I hadn't signed death notifications for 300 lunar personnel who died buying us the seconds we needed to fight back. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. So I'll tell you the truth, Reyes continued. Humanity will never start a war. But if someone brings war to our doorstep again, we will end it. Permanently. We will not fight fair. We will not fight clean. We will fight with every dirty trick, every desperate measure, every weapon we can forge or steal or improvise. Because that's what species from death worlds do. We survive. Ambassador Thelnix of the Concordance spoke up, her voice trembling. But surely you understand. Such tactics, such disregard for the laws of civilized warfare, it makes you no better than the Vraxians. Wrong. Cross said sharply. The Vraxians attacked an innocent world. We defended it. The Vraxians sought to enslave. We sought to survive. Don't you dare equate defense with aggression. The Arbiter raised a hand, calling for calm. The Council must deliberate on Earth's actions. There are those who wish to see sanctions imposed, others who argue for complete isolation of the human species, and some, she glanced at the Draxan representative, who believe humanity has earned its place among us regardless of the methods. Reyes straightened her shoulders. Impose whatever sanctions you want. Isolate us if that makes you feel safer. But understand this. Humanity doesn't need your permission to exist. We proved that. What we need is for the galaxy to understand that we will never be victims again. She turned to leave, then paused at the chamber entrance. Oh, and one more thing. While you deliberate, you should know that Earth has already begun construction on 200 new warships. We've militarized our asteroid belt. We're establishing defensive stations at every jump point within 10 light-years of our system. And we're doing it whether you approve or not. The Cathari ambassador's structure flashed with alarm. That's a direct violation of accords we never signed, Reyes finished. Of treaties we were never part of. You can't hold us to agreements we weren't allowed to make. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Welcome to the new reality. Humanity is done asking for permission. After the session ended, the Arbiter found Reyes on an observation deck, staring out at the stars. Cross had gone to file reports, leaving the Admiral alone with her thoughts. That was quite a performance, the Arbiter said softly, approaching. You've frightened half the council. Good, Reyes replied without turning. Fear breeds respect. Respect breeds caution. Caution prevents wars. Or starts them. Reyes finally looked at her. You think we're the threat now? You think Earth will become what it defeated? I think, the Arbiter said carefully, that scared species make dangerous choices, and humanity is very, very scared. You're right. Reyes turned back to the viewport. We're terrified. Because we learned something during that battle. We learned that we're alone out here. That when death came knocking, nobody helped us. Nobody even tried. She was quiet for a moment. The Vraxians weren't the real revelation. The real revelation was the Council, sitting in this chamber watching us die, and doing nothing but taking notes. The Arbiter had no response to that. So yes, Reyes continued, we're building warships. We're militarizing our space. We're preparing for the next threat and the one after that because we know now that we can only rely on ourselves. She met the Arbiter's eyes. But here's what you need to understand. Humanity doesn't want an empire. We don't want conquest. We've spent our entire history fighting each other, and we're exhausted from it. What we want is simple. To be left alone to grow, to explore, to build our future without looking over our shoulder for the next species that thinks we're easy prey. And if another species does threaten you? Reyes's expression went cold. Then they'll learn the same lesson the Vraxians did. That humanity is not prey. We're the thing that climbed out of the ocean, looked at the apex predators of our world, and said, I think I'll eat you instead. We're the species that thrived in ice ages, survived plagues that killed half our population, and split the atom before we figured out how to live in peace. She stepped closer to the Arbiter. You want to know what happens next? I'll tell you. Humanity will join the galactic community. We'll trade. We'll share technology. We'll contribute to the greater good. But we'll do it on our terms, with our weapons pointed outward, and our defenses always active. Because the moment we attacked Earth, the galaxy taught us a lesson. What lesson? The Arbiter asked quietly. That in this universe, strength is the only currency that matters, and mercy is a luxury only the powerful can afford. 6 months later, the first human delegation arrived at the Concordance homeworld for a cultural exchange. The humans brought music, art, literature, gifts of peace from a species the galaxy now viewed with wary respect. But in Earth's solar system, the shipyards never stopped working. The orbital debris was slowly cleared and repurposed into armor plating. The atmospheric damage became the focus of the most ambitious geoengineering project in human history. And every loss, every casualty, every sacrifice was remembered and catalogued. Because humanity had learned its lesson, well, never again would they be unprepared. Never again would they rely on galactic mercy, and never again would any species look at Earth and see weakness. At Admiral Reyes stood in the rebuilt command center, now deeper, more fortified, more ready. She looked at the star map showing Earth's expanding defensive perimeter, and allowed herself a small, grim smile. The Vraxians had come to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous. They had created a humanity that knew its own strength. Commander Cross approached with a data pad. Admiral, the new fleet is ready for deployment. Fleet Command wants to know where to position them. Reyes studied the map, her eyes tracking potential threat vectors, invasion routes, strategic choke points. Finally, she answered, everywhere. Position them everywhere. Because the galaxy may have learned to fear us, but we learned something far more valuable. What's that, ma'am? She turned to face him, and in her eyes burned the same fire that had driven humanity from the caves to the stars. That we are not the prey. We never were. We're survivors of a death world, and survival is what we do best. Let the galaxy remember that. Let them all remember what happens when you attack Earth. She looked back at the stars, at the vast darkness filled with unknowable threats and infinite possibilities. They thought they were teaching us our place. Instead, they taught us that we have no limits. And that, Reyes said softly, is the most dangerous lesson of all.